When Jungkook says Jimin did it better, Paris Fashion Week turns into BTS rivalry stage. Who could have predicted that Paris Fashion Week, a global celebration of couture and elegance, would suddenly morph into a stage of whispered rivalry between two of K-pop's biggest names? Yet that's exactly what happened when Jungkook, BTS's golden magne and the darling of Calvin Klein, allegedly turned the spotlight toward his bandmate with one unexpected remark: Jimin did it better. The words spread like wildfire across social media, whispered at first in fan chats and then amplified by major news outlets. Some claimed Jungkook had been overheard backstage after Dior's Spring-Summer 2026 show, where Jimin made his triumphant return as Dior's global ambassador. Others insisted he said it casually during a Weverse Live, comparing Jimin's sleek Paris look to his own oversized Calvin Klein moment weeks earlier in New York. Whatever the origin, the message was clear. Jungkook had bowed to Jimin's fashion supremacy, and the internet was never going to let it go. Paris itself seemed to respond. Streets were flooded with army in purple, chanting both names as if the runway had become a concert stage. Photographers and journalists, torn between capturing Dior's silhouettes and the unfolding BTS narrative, debated openly about which star had owned Fashion Week. Was it Jungkook, whose effortless Calvin Klein charisma still lingered in global memory, or was it Jimin, radiant in Dior, reclaiming his crown after military service? American outlets framed the story as rivalry, running headlines like BTS brothers, fashion foes, while French press took a softer angle, calling Jungkook's comment a mark of humility, not competition. Yet fans weren't so sure. Memes flooded TikTok, showing Jungkook and Jimin side by side in their respective brand fits, with captions like "Choose your fighter" and "The real runway is BTS." And beneath the memes lay something deeper, an emotional tug-of-war in the fandom. Armies who adored the brotherhood between Jungkook and Jimin now questioned whether the media was twisting affection into rivalry. Could Jungkook's compliment, meant as warmth, really be fueling a narrative of competition? Or had Fashion Week, with its flashbulbs and pressure, unintentionally staged a new arena where BTS's fashion icons were destined to be measured against each other? Still, there was no denying the power of the moment. Jungkook's words, whether playful or profound, elevated Jimin's Paris debut from a Dior milestone into a global cultural event. It wasn't just about fashion anymore. It was about two legends redefining their influence on opposite sides of the Atlantic, with the whole world watching, and so the question lingers, echoing through every headline, every fan cam, every late-night argument between fans. When Jungkook says Jimin did it better, is it rivalry, respect, or the most spectacular fusion of both? Paris had seen its share of fashion icons, but nothing could prepare the city for the storm that followed Jimin's first Dior runway appearance since his military discharge. The Tuileries garden glowed with lights, cameras flashed endlessly, and yet it was not Dior's designs that dominated Twitter feeds, it was the words attached to Jungkook. Jimin did it better. Whether whispered backstage, muttered to reporters, or teased on Weverse, the phrase instantly redefined Paris Fashion Week. Overnight, Dior versus Calvin Klein transformed into something bigger. Jimin versus Jungkook, France versus America, couture refinement versus streetwear rebellion. The world had not seen a rivalry this intoxicating since the Beatles were compared against the Rolling Stones, except this time the battlefield wasn't music, but fashion runways. Jungkook, fresh off his Calvin Klein SS26 stage in New York just weeks earlier, had already been hailed by American media as the new face of global masculinity. His oversized khaki suit at NYFW had been praised as the uniform of a generation tired of rules. Jimin, however, stepped into Paris shimmering in Dior, sharp, elegant, perfectly curated, and reminded the world why French luxury had claimed him long before his enlistment. His aura was unshakable. His walk through the gardens was less a celebrity arrival and more coronation. And then came Jungkook's words. The moment he allegedly said Jimin did it better, interpretations split like wildfire. For American outlets, it was drama. BTS as rivals, Calvin Klein humbled by Dior, brothers turned fashion competitors. Billboard ran the headline, Did Jungkook just surrender Fashion Week to Jimin, while Vanity Fair dubbed Paris the purple battlefield? French outlets, in contrast, softened the blow. Le Monde insisted it was admiration, not rivalry, calling Jungkook's comment a testament to respect within BTS. But ARMY wasn't buying the diplomacy. Fans dissected the quote as if it were a lyric. On TikTok, split-screen edits showed Jungkook's Calvin Klein runway in New York spliced against Jimin's Dior entrance in Paris, with captions like "Choose your champion" and "Calvin Klein vs. Dior." BTS edition. Others went further, joking that Paris Fashion Week had become the 8th BTS member. What few outsiders grasped was how emotionally charged this rivalry felt to fans. Jimin's Dior comeback wasn't just fashion, it was redemption, proof of survival, a return after years of military silence. Jungkook's Calvin Klein era, meanwhile, had kept BTS visible in the West during that silence. To see these two legacies collide in the same global spotlight was overwhelming. Jungkook bowing verbally to Jimin felt both humbling and destabilizing. A reminder that no matter how big they get individually, the world will always pit them against each other. Industry insiders added fuel to the fire. Fashion analysts debated whether Dior's Paris presence had officially eclipsed Calvin Klein's New York show, with Jimin's aura positioning him as the face of luxury's next decade. Meanwhile, American branding experts countered that Jungkook's Calvin Klein moment was more disruptive, more youthful, more reflective of Gen Z's rejection of tradition. The rivalry narrative wasn't just a fan invention. It became the very lens through which fashion critics now compared global brands. But the most explosive debates weren't in magazines or runways. They were online, where ARMY argued deep into the night. Was Jungkook's phrase a surrender or a setup? Was he humbling himself out of brotherly respect? Or was he slyly redirecting attention so the spotlight burned brighter on Jimin? Some fans called it proof of eternal support. This isn't rivalry, it's loyalty. Jungkook wants Jimin to win. Others feared the media spin would fracture perceptions. They're brothers, but headlines are turning them into competitors. Why can't people see the love instead of rivalry? The irony? Both sides were right. Because in the chaos of interpretations, Paris Fashion Week ceased to belong to Dior, Calvin Klein, or even the designers themselves. It belonged to BTS. Jungkook's words had ensured that what was supposed to be about fabric, silhouettes, and trends became about loyalty, legacy, and identity. In the weeks leading up to Paris Fashion Week, the fashion world had been bracing for Dior's grand display, but few realized it would evolve into something far more seismic. When Jimin walked into the Tuileries Garden as Dior's global ambassador, he wasn't merely presenting clothes. He was carrying the weight of history, of his post-military comeback, of an entire nation's anticipation. His elegance reflected the essence of French luxury, timeless, refined, crafted to last for generations. On the other side of the Atlantic, Jungkook's Calvin Klein legacy still lingered like smoke after a fire. His oversized khaki suit at New York Fashion Week, just weeks before Jimin's Paris debut, had been heralded as a revolution in American streetwear aesthetics. If Jimin embodied Parisian grace, Jungkook embodied New York grit. Dior spoke to tradition and couture.